My backing
Hey,
track just stops abruptly.
who needs a fade out? Right. Um.
Yeah,
Oh, geez.
exactly.
Okay. So I'm just gonna have my hands full admitting people to the meeting. So many people are joining quite quickly. Brett, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's a little early here, so I apologise for the coughing and hacking. I've got my cup of anti-coughing medicine here, so my Java.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Brett's in Australia. So it is 8 a.m.
Yeah, 8 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah, about the right time to be blasting some fusion in the house. I'm sure your family are appreciative. I have a story like that, but that's for another time. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to this little masterclass that we're doing. Uh, a lot of names that I recognize, but actually, Brett, this is one of our most popular sign-up masterclass. We've had only over 1,000 people sign up for this that weren't
Right.
existing customers or don't know who I am or don't know about my company. So, if you regulars will permit me, I'll just give you guys a little introduction to what we're here to do and a little bit about Brett and what we're all about. God, keeping admitting people. So my name's Luke, and I run Guitar Vivo, and we made that little book that you can see in the background of Brett's video, his hybrid picking book, which came out over a year ago now, and you've probably all been spammed with ads for that, which I apologize for. But it comes from a good place. We want
Shameless product placement, by the way. Sorry about that. So,
to. I love it. Um, and today we are launching Brett's new book, which
the
is
video.
um,
Oh God.
which is on legato. So there's information on that. There is something a bit complicated about that, which is you can pre-order it today, all through just Guitar Vivo through the website, and you can get some extra savings today if you buy the digital edition. And the paperback comes out on Wednesday, and we'll email you, and there'll be a 24-hour window where you can get a super discounted price for that as well. So we'll obviously be plugging this throughout, so I won't make you listen to any more of that just yet. Um, Legato and Brett Garsed kind of go hand in hand, which is actually probably the reason I became obsessed with Legato. Probably seeing some of your playing, and I think you opened this can of worms for me. So, who better for me to put my trust in to write the book for us on Legato than you? Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to playing the way you play? Because there's some interesting stories there about whether you thought you were even doing it right and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I'm self-taught. I did take lessons off a guy in this little town I live in now, Castlemaine. That's where I was born and bred, and went to school here and did my apprenticeship here and spent most of my life here until I joined John Farnham's band in 1986, and then I got to see the world and travel around a lot. But I took about 4 lessons off a great guitar player here in town, but all he did was teach me 4 songs. He didn't really teach me anything about scales or technique, but he did give me great advice where he said, "What do you want to be?" And of course, I'd heard Richie Blackmore, and I said, "I want to be a lead guitar player." And he said, "All right, fair enough." And he went, he drew a picture of a left hand, and he went four fingers, 4 frets, which was great advice at the time, like quite sort of forward-thinking advice. If I'd been left to my own devices, I might have gone with the 3-fingered blues approach, which is certainly nothing wrong with that. But I think for me, it probably would have left me wanting, considering I was destined to hear players like Holdsworth. But I was always a legato player because I only took those 4 lessons and then I just sort of stumbled along on my own. And it just never even occurred to me that you could pick all those notes. I just assumed that you would pick one and then do the rest with your left hand. And I liked the sound of it. It seemed very fluid and flowing. And it wasn't until many years later, like, I mean, we're talking like 5 years later, and people have been telling me I'm a great guitar player and all this sort of stuff, because it was quite like I started playing in pubs around here when I was 13, and that was very unusual back then in the 70s. I mean, now it's quite common to see really accomplished musicians at a very young age, but back then just seeing a kid in a band in a pub back then was really unusual. And people were, they're running up saying, "Oh, you're the greatest guitar player I've ever seen. I could play some fast things and all that sort of stuff." luckily, I knew all that was rubbish. I mean, I was just smart enough to know that. Yeah, thank you. It's very kind of you to say that, but you know, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm still hacking away. But then years later, I was reading a Frank Zappa interview, and someone, they must have mentioned to Frank that he was a fast guitar player or something like that. And Frank said, "Well, I'm not really that fast because I pick one note and then I let my left hand do the rest. And I don't pick all the notes like, say, John McLaughlin does." And I thought to myself, oh no, I knew I'd get this wrong if I was left to my own devices and didn't have a good teacher. And I honestly really did think I'd completely and utterly got it wrong, and that I'd broken some law or something of guitar playing, and I was a fraud and all this sort of stuff. And when I started to examine all my favourite players, like even Eddie Van Halen and Gary Moore and Larry Carlton, I could hear that they were picking all those notes. I'd never taken much notice of it before. And then Eddie mentioned Alan Holdsworth in his first cover interview in Guitar Player. And I thought, well, if Eddie says he's great, I better check him out. So luckily I got the first UK record and heard the In the Dead of Night solo, which was what Eddie recommended we all listen to. And the minute Alan played, I recognised that sound, that legato sound. And not only did I recognise the sound, I absolutely just loved everything he was doing. Like, I just fell in love with the Holdsworth sound. And I thought, you know, that immediately I went, well, you should just do what you want to do. There's no real rules or laws or anything like that. Just do what you feel is right and let the sound be your guide. If you want a more staccato, aggressive sound, pick the notes. And if you don't, use some legato technique or tapping, whatever it takes. So that's my journey into legato. I always was a legato player. The thing I still struggle with to this day is alternate picking. I really can't do it, but I do pick a lot when I play my regular style, which I hope you'll be able to sort of discern once I go to my 2-camera setup. So anyway, that's my journey into legato.
Oh, I nearly had some mic problems there. That would have been a nightmare. So, um, I think I have to put some pressure on the people in this group and tell them a bit about this video recording that we're doing. This video is going to be provided with the book. So when people buy the book, it's got all the examples, things like that. They'll also get this video. So our goal here today is to get as many questions from you guys as possible so that we can see and make sure we've included in the book all of the problem areas that people are having. So we've got things that we're going to talk about, and we've got a set plan, but what would be amazing is if you guys can also in the chat start letting us know what your hang-ups are with legato, what kind of problems you're coming across, because someone else here might be struggling with it, and then we can mention it and make sure we've covered everything and you know, hit all the bases that we need to touch on. So I think the first thing we need to talk about is just this idea of what is legato. It's because some people think it means smooth or it means tied together. It's kind of 3 core techniques, right? Is
With
it?
legato, yeah. I mean, look, it means different things to different people and even different genres, doesn't it? Like, I mean, in classical music, I think it means a whole different thing. But for us guitar players in this modern age, it pretty much means the use of the fretting hand doing a majority of the work. And look, in some cases, all the work. Like I've seen, you know, that fantastic video of Guthrie Govan playing just nothing but his left hand, drinking a cup of coffee. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And so, I mean, you can go to that extreme where, and I've even seen footage of Alan Holdsworth where you can clearly see that he's doing entire passages or movements across the neck where it's just the left hand doing all the work. And so there's that extreme where you don't pick anything and you just use your left hand. And that's personally very far away from where I'm at these days. Or you can start to combine other techniques like alternate picking or hybrid picking or sweep picking and let the right hand join in a bit so you can get some accents and a bit of dynamic variation. That's more where I'm coming from these days. And being my big problem with my whole style is that I love to play slide guitar as well. And I insist on playing slide guitar on the same guitar in standard tuning. And I saw a recent interview Rick Beato did with Warren Haynes from the Allman Brothers Band, who I absolutely love. and Warren plays in standard tuning as well. And Rick said, "What's your action like?" And Warren said, he sort of laughed and said, "It's too low for slide and too high for everything else." And I thought, man, I feel your pain. That's exactly where I sort of sit. I have to use a certain gauge of strings that I use 10 to 52, so that kind of helps me have a slightly lower action, and the slightly heavier gauge supports the slide, so I can get away with it better then. But my good friend TJ Helmrich, who is pretty much the world's preeminent two-hand tapper, and him and Scott Henderson went to visit Alan Holdsworth back in I think it was the very early 90s, and he told me about the visit, and I think he tried Alan's guitar, and I think Alan was using something like 8 to 36, so a very light gauge of string. So I mean, if you really want that Holdsworth sort of vibe, or a really efficient legato vibe, the lower the action and the lighter the strings, the better. But it just depends on what you're going for personally. So, like I said, my whole approach is not about telling you what to do. It's just presenting options, and you need to sort through those and make your own personal decisions about it and tailor it to what you want to do. And then hopefully your identity will emerge. That's my goal with any of this instructional material I do, is to just help you be yourself. It's not about me, certainly not about me saying, this is how you do it. So there we go.
Nice. I think that's one thing that's really clear in the book, is that legato is an articulation. It's not just a technique, it's a expressive device, right? And it's about a sound, it's about a way of presenting and dressing up your notes and the phrases that you play. And I think that's something someone's just mentioned in the chat about your playing. It's kind of a funny story. I don't know if you saw this. So we've been running the ad for this event, where you're playing this really incredible, like arpeggio string skipping thing, and you're picking the notes, the first note in each string, and then playing legato. But because you're blending so much hybrid picking with it, someone was saying this isn't legato because he's picking, and I kind of wrote them, and I tried to write a nice comment back, which is that one of the hardest things about it, or one of the real challenging things about it, is being able to master this technique in a way that you can blend it in with the picking and with the string skipping and with all these other things, so it doesn't feel like you're just turning on a switch and you're all of a sudden in legato mode and it exists by itself, and you're running these patterns up and down a string, and coming back out of it. So that's one thing that you talk about, and that's one thing that you demonstrate in the book, is there's lots of picking involved with these exercises as well. Can you maybe show us some exercises that you might give to someone as a starter to work on just the basics of hammer-ons and pull-offs?
Yeah, I mean, that's important too. Like, it's like people often will say to me, like in regards to the hybrid picking, they'll sort of meet me for the first time and they'll say, hey, show me some of that hybrid picking stuff. And I have to sort of explain to them, like, I don't, if I do a gig, it's not like, and now, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the hybrid picking part of the performance. It's like, it's like, if you look at my style of playing, there's a little bit of Gambale sweep picking. I mean, I owe Frank enormously for even just opening the door to the whole hybrid thing, because seeing his first video was the thing that really blew my mind and made me realize I could access a lot of that kind of a lot of those left-hand fretboard movements that Frank was doing through hybrid picking and not sweep picking. And but I do use a little bit of sweep picking every now and then, and it's great. Like, there's quite unique things I can get from it. So that's in there. There's the hybrid picking, there's the legato, and there's even a little bit of alternate picking in there in certain ways. So I mean, I think that's important to have your style be a style that's a sound that follows you everywhere you go. I can sort of tell when people are separating what they do when they're doing, say, a performance, and then 1 minute they're doing incredible alternate picking, and then it's all left hand, and it just seems weird to me. Like, I prefer I want to have it so seamless you can't really tell what's happening at any time, because it's all happening and all the time. But like, if someone wanted to get better at just to get their left hand moving, I mean, one of the best things is just a really simple now just a straight. Let me go to my two camera setup here, because you can sort of get a clearer picture of what's going on. Now, it's just simple hammer-ons, really. Now, me personally, for a 4-note phrase or a 3-note phrase like that, I'll probably pick the first 2 notes where I'll do an upstroke. For the beginning string, I'll go. And then a descending, I will do the same thing, whereas the last 2 will be pull-offs. So the reason I explored that option was because when you tend to do legato in a 3-note per string phrase, like if you do a 3-note per string scale, which you would, like the alternate pickers are really great at though. That's about as fast as I can alternate pick it, by the way.
So that
When
made me
the
laugh
alternate
because
pickers,
I've never seen you play like that before.
I know, yeah. You probably never will again. Actually, it's like because I just can't do it. I can't do. It's because this middle finger joins in all the time and wrecks it. But a lot of times when people sort of use legato phrases like that, they'll pick the first note and hammer on or pull off on the descending section. They'll pull off or hammer on the next 2. Now that's fine, but it does tend to give you a more triplety sort of sound because that first note's going to be the strongest usually, like the. You can hear how it sort of wants to be a triplet, doesn't it? You want to sort of get this. Wants to get that galloping triplet thing. So when I started to pick the first 2 notes, I could turn it into a more quarter note phrase where you get. It sounds more like a quarter note phrase, even though you are playing 3 notes per string. So it's just another way to combine a bit of alternate picking with your legato technique if you want to maintain a bit more rhythmic control. You can certainly do that with just playing it legato, but that'd be a great challenge to work on as a legato technique, is just pick the first note, but really try and. There was Alan Holdsworth used to talk about. I'll always keep referring back to Alan because he really took the legato technique to a place that maybe no one even has to this day, but definitely during his lifetime he took it to a place that none of us ever really considered it possible to go to. And Alan talked about how he hated pull-offs, and I have to apologise to Tom Quayle here because we were having a chat on one of Luke's live streams ages ago, and Tom said, I want you to clear up a misconception that you don't do pull-offs, and I think I said, no, I don't. And Tom was quite surprised when I said that, and I actually misunderstood what he meant, in the sense that the way I've seen Satch and Vi do it, and they obviously have pretty big hands, and they have this ability to keep their first finger anchored like this, and just let the other 2 fingers literally. You see how the first finger never leaves the next, so. Whereas I have to. If I angle that down, you can really see it on that bottom camera though. So you almost get a mini hammer-on with it, and I think that's where Alan was more coming from. He said he just didn't like the sound because sometimes I think people. They might do the pull-off movement too hard, and if they're using lighter strings, they might tend to get a bit of a. They might sort of pull it out of tune, if you know what I mean. So it's an interesting technique. Like if you go for a lighter gauge string, you've really got to adjust your left hand approach and even your right hand approach to sort of balance everything out. Because if you get too aggressive, it can pull things out of tune. But just that's a great just way to get a feel for it. Is that 4-note per string just. And then just do loops of it. Just go. and then move it across all 4 strings if you like. Like just go, all 6 strings. What am I talking about? 4 strings? Am I playing bass now? Am I? So that was me just picking the first note of each 4-note per string phrase. But then if you want to get more into how I do it, you just pick the first 2 and hammer on the last 2 and then pull off the last 2. So you can see where that came from, because the hybrid picking thing kicks in. But if you didn't hybrid pick, you just do an upstroke and a downstroke, or a downstroke and an upstroke. It's up to you. I feel like with playing up the neck, the string has a lot of energy in it as you go up. So the legato technique works great moving this way, because there's so much sustain in the note. It wants to keep ringing. And I'm not using much gain, as you can hear. I'm not really using a ton of gain. Whereas on the way down, it wants to fade away a lot quicker. So if I pick the first couple of notes, just gives it a bit more energy and keeps the energy in the strings, so the notes sound a bit stronger. But it's, like I said, it's an incredibly personal approach. Like if I was using lighter strings and a lot more gain, I may change that approach.
Nice. I need to stop you there because we've got about 10 questions that I think what you've just done is the answer to. And I want to address those questions and show how what you've just done is actually a really important facet of your playing. But firstly, though, someone's asked if you can turn your mic up. Can you turn everything up a little bit? Is that possible? Or just bring it in a little
Yeah.
bit?
Yeah, I think I can. Oh, yeah, hang on a minute. Sorry, I got so many windows open here, I don't even know what I'm doing. Is that a little bit better?
I think so. Could you go a little bit
Testing
more?
1, 2. I've definitely turned my
Oh, there
mic
we go.
up.
There we go. That's perfect.
Good. All right. And I
Okay.
can actually, I'll try turning up the overall level a little bit too, just for the backing tracks and the guitar as well. So we'll see
So
how that goes.
I'm going to run through all of these questions, and you can stop me if what you're doing isn't actually what you've done isn't already the answer for them. If you want to go deeper into them. So one of the first questions is just about controlling the right amount of uh, finger pressure. So someone said, would love to know how to balance good tone articulation with the least finger pressure required. I tend to press too hard such that my fingers cramp up. So this thing that you're doing of actively releasing unfretted, well, releasing notes that aren't the note you want as you go, is that part of developing a lighter touch and less cramp and effort?
Yeah, it is actually, and I must add too, because we talked about this on another one of the live streams. Remember when we all held our? There was you, me, Josh Meader, Tom Quayle, and
Yep.
Sam Bell. There's a whole bunch of just fantastic players, and we all held our hands up like this, and I wanted to demonstrate how deformed my index fingers are. If you can see that, how they bend the wrong direction,
So this is a fun
and
one.
I've
Anyone on everyone on camera, if you do this little thing, just put your
yeah,
fingers up like that.
yeah, I can see a lot of really lovely straight index fingers,
Right.
and whereas mine are not. So I mean, yeah, look at that. That's perfect. But I
Wow.
mean, oh boy, and so and also I have very regular sized hands. I'm not a very tall person. I'm only about 5'9", and and uh, and I can't stretch very far. Like I met Sean Lane personally. I don't know if you know who Sean Lane is, but he was just an amazing musician. And I met Sean, and Sean and I were about the same height. If, in fact, Sean might have even been a little bit shorter than me. But he just had this incredible facility to stretch his left-hand fingers on the guitar, and his right hand, of course, because he was a phenomenal piano player as well. And whereas I have none of those things. I not only can't stretch very far, my fingers are all bent the wrong way. So if I'm going like that, I think this finger should probably be about there. So forget about playing any Chuck Berry tunes. It's just not going to happen. Any Chuck Berry blues, it's out of my reach, literally. So that's sort of where the lifting the fingers off came, because I also read about Alan Holdsworth talking about 4-note per string scales, and where he would play like an F major scale instead of playing it. Alan would play it. So you get this incredible movement up the neck. And I thought, well, that's awesome. I'd love to get into that. But I quickly realized that the minute this guy had done his job, he had to get out of there, because otherwise there's no way I could ever get a stretch like that, keeping all my fingers on the neck. So I had to find a workaround for the problem. Once again, that's all about personalizing this approach, isn't it? Like with the instrument. The guitar is a tough instrument if you don't have that kind of facility. Like, I suppose even piano as well. Like, a lot of people talked about Rachmaninoff pieces, and apparently he had enormous hands and he would write according to what he was capable of. And the Alan Holdsworth songs are the same. Alan would write chords he was physically capable of playing, but for someone like me, I'd be like, no, I'm out. I can't do it. I'd need to buy a ukulele and try and play it on that. I don't know what I would do, but that's where that approach came from, this dancing of the fingers where they don't stay anchored on the neck, they just move. And I'll go back to my other cameras here. And it just really, in fact, if I bend down like this is better. You can sort of get a clearer image of what's happening. So, yeah, the minute you can sort of see like the fingers just lift off the neck. You sort of got this constant dancing of the fingers across the fretboard where it's almost like watching someone do the two-hand tapping. I don't know if TJ Helmrich influenced me a bit that way, but it just helps me get intervals that I normally wouldn't be able to get. But I think there's also there might even be a sound attached to it as well. Perhaps more of a tapping-like sound rather than a strong pull-off sound. So it's definitely something worth considering.
I think, there's an important thing we need to talk about there, which is because you're performing that action, some people look at that and think you're doing what some people call reverse hammer-ons or inverted hammer-ons, where there's no pull-off motion, there's no energy from the finger pulling off, and all that's happening is the finger below is hammering to make the attack. But that's not the case. You're still giving some pull-off into
Absolutely,
that.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, there is. Yeah, and that's why I felt bad, because I completely misanswered Tom's question to me, and because he's quite right. Yeah, of course I still do pull-offs to try and give the note some energy. Maybe if you had like massive hands and you were capable of doing a legitimate hammer-on, which I'd say Alan definitely could, absolutely, it would work. But in the Legato book, Luke and I were talking about how I should try and cover as many topics as I can, regardless of whether I actually use them or not. And I did one section where I just played with my left hand, and I realized how alien that is to me. Like I even tried to buy one of those fret muting things, but it didn't really work. I think it was designed for 7-string guitar, so it didn't work on this guitar. So I ended up just doing it the old-fashioned way, like I saw Vivian Campbell do years ago in a Dio video, and it just made me realize how dependent my legato style is on this guy, on the picking. It's woven into it. So that's just me personally, like if you, like I said, I've seen Alan play a lot, and we've got some beautiful high resolution footage of Alan available to us now. And you can see, whole moments where he just has his hand there, and the left hand is doing the lion's share of the workload. So no rules, just figure it out and do what feels right, and set up your guitar accordingly. If you want to try and play that way, I would recommend low action, light strings and high gain.
Just to go back a second as well, I do think that the way you execute it, that timing of pull off with a hammer-on, is an important part of the sound, because that hammer-on does get some energy into the string, so you don't have to pull off so hard. So that pull off isn't as pronounced, and you get that more fluid sound on the way down, instead of getting that kind of quacky pull off that a lot of like rock and overly tense players get. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you get that fluid sound, I think, in part by combining energy from the hammering finger and the pull off, which is really
Yeah, Alan did describe it in an interview as a meowing sound, and I think what he meant was the if people were trying to do the pull off too hard, they were actually tending to pull the string out of tune. And see, for him, that would be an issue because he was using really light strings. Like, I mean, even just the amount of hand pressure he put on the frets. If you've got large frets and you grip too tight, you'll pull it out of tune. So, and just hand pressure in general. Like, try to play with intensity, but not in your body. Like, it's really hard to do. I still struggle with it, and if I get a bit nervous, if I'm a little self-conscious, heck, I'm even self-conscious playing for you guys today. It's like I don't really do many live gigs anymore, which isn't by choice. It's just the way things have worked out. But yeah, it's sort of you've got to psychologically just calm yourself down and go, let it just be effortless. Just take the energy out of your body and the tension out of your body, and try to just enjoy and get into the flow of it.
amazing. On that topic, so we're getting lots of people asking about how you're viewing the fretboard, which we'll get into. They're asking if it's caged or 3 note per string and all this kind of stuff. I think the reason they're asking you that is because the way you play legato, the level of tension that you have, the way you've actually organized the technique allows you to play in a much more freer, lateral way than most players who have that really heavy anchored thing. They kind of have to be in one place and then go to the next place and then go to the next place because they kind of got maybe
Right.
too much tension on the thumb. Can you tell us a little bit about your thumb and how that's moving and how you're, I don't know, traveling across the neck more than anyone else does?
Well, that's an interesting question, that, because it might have been Tom that did it. I can't remember. It was someone was at the NAM show and they did a video going around all their friends at the NAM show who are all world class players and just asking them about how they see the fretboard, the age old question. And I must sort of admit, I tend to hear the fretboard rather than see it, or I try to. Like I'm really an interval based player because I've always played by ear. I think it was that survival technique when I grew up and didn't have a teacher. Excuse me, and I didn't even have a better player in town to ask. Like, there's that beautiful old story about John and Paul from the Beatles traveling, taking 6 buses and a train to get across London to meet this guy and learn a diminished chord, and all of a sudden they started writing all these great songs. And I thought, oh boy, I wish we'd had that great jazz guitarist in town. I could have gone banging on their door and asking them questions, but there was no one. So all I had to survive by was just what I could hear and what I could interpret. And I think if I was born with any kind of, I wouldn't call it a gift, if I was born with any kind of asset, it was a pretty good ear for sounds and relative pitch. I don't have perfect pitch. So, if someone plays a note on an oboe, I can't say, oh, that's definitely a B flat or whatever. I might get close, but it'd just be a guess. Whereas perfect pitch people absolutely know what that note is, and it's indisputable. But my relative pitch is pretty good. And that's kind of how I navigate the neck. So if I'm playing any note, I'm playing that note, and I think, well, the next note I would really like to hear is a minor third up from that note. And so I either know I'm going to have to stay on the same string and go up a fret, up 3 frets, like that, or move to the next string and go down a fret. Or if it's on this string, I go up 3 frets as on the same string, but I go across to the next string and down 2 frets. So I know the geometry of the neck that's how it is to me, is what note am I looking for next and where do I grab it? And what are my options? So that's kind of how I've designed my whole way of playing. And I sort of just figured that's how all the great improvisers do play, because they just never seem to be lost. They never seem to get stuck in a spot. And I suppose it was just, finding good information just by random. Because, I mean, when I was growing up, the only real source of information I ever had was Guitar Player magazine, which we had to wait. We were 3 months behind here in Australia for the US issue to come out. So if it was June, I was reading the February issue or something like that. But I saw an interview with Steve Morse, and who I loved. And Steve said if you're in whatever position you're in, within about 4 to 5 frets, I think it was about 5 frets, he said you should be able to play over any chord change and find all the notes you need in that position. And then when I eventually started teaching at GIT, I didn't study there, unfortunately. I just sort of walked straight in the door as a teacher. But whenever I was sitting in Scott Henderson's class just observing the master at work, and a lot of times Scott would make all the students play through changes through jazz standards or any chord changes, and he would make them play on one string. So they had to understand what's the interval I'm playing and where do I find the next interval. They had to turn it into a piano in a way, because you couldn't use a pattern or shape based system. Now there's certainly nothing wrong with shapes or patterns. I mean, man, that's how we live. I mean, but at the amount of times I'm talking to people that might come for a lesson and they're frustrated because they don't feel like they have any freedom, and I say, but you've already got it. Like you're just not listening to what you're playing. You're sort of observing it and watching it. It's like contained within everything they're playing is some magical stuff, but they're sort of just visualizing it rather than actually hearing what's happening. Because if I have an ear training drill where I'll say hit your low E string like that, and then on your fifth string just randomly choose any interval. And you can do this. Don't look at the guitar. I mean, I'm cheating because I can see myself in my own camera, but pretend I can't do that. And just randomly choose any interval, say up here. Oh, got an octave. Look at that, unbelievable. Try one down here. Now I go, I think that's a major 6. And if I look down, then you can test yourself, and you look down and you go, oh, I'm playing a C sharp against an E. It's a major 6. And you just keep on going, and I think that's a major 3rd. You look up there, G sharp. There you go, And then you start moving across the strings until you're eventually at the top string, and the intervals are quite separated. So that might make them a little more challenging to hear, but they are all the same. There's only the 12 intervals, counting the octave, so that sounds like a 4th to me. Yeah, it's an A, There's a flat 5. There's a major 6 again. There's a flat 6. There's a 2. There's that flat 6 again. That pesky flat 6. There's the octave. The weird thing is, if you do this little drill for about 4 or 5 minutes every now and then during the day, at first it might be challenging, but I swear, like you start to hit the same thing so many times, it drills them into your brain, and before you know it, you're actually starting to really hear what you're playing. So when I hear the fretboard, like I do like to practice with my eyes closed a lot, but I still see the fretboard in my mind because I can feel where I am. So if I've got my eyes shut and I'm playing, I'm hearing that flat 7, and then I realise, I can just move up to I see my options, you know what I mean? I can. It's really liberating, because you start to see that it's more about what you want to play, and it gives you've got so many options on how you actually play it. And so then that's when the neck really starts to open up, and you start to see it as one big playground sort of thing. The 4-note per string thing was the key. When Alan mentioned that in an interview, like I said, Alan didn't talk much about his technique in interviews. He was very, not guarded about it, I just don't think he wanted to talk about it. All the people I've ever met that knew him, I didn't really know him very well at all, but I didn't know him at all, actually. I only met him one night at the Baked Potato after his gig. But all the people that did know him well said he just hated talking about himself and his playing. And in an interview, he just literally mentioned, I play a lot of 4-note per string scales, and that was it. Then he was on to the next subject, whatever that was. And I just remembered that one sentence, and I thought, 4-note per string scales, gee. Okay, fair enough. So I suppose if he plays an A major scale, he plays 4 notes on a string. And that's when I realised that's what he was doing, was the... So I looked at it and I thought, I'll figure out a pattern for this, and I'll play it really fast in 2 octaves up and down, and everyone's going to go nuts. It'll be a real great... So what I did was I was intending on turning it into a lick, or just a cheap trick that I could do, because I thought to myself, honestly, how many times could you do that in the course of a gig? Like twice, before people started saying he's only got one trick, and he just keeps doing it over and over again. And I started to realize the value of it was forcing me to look at the neck in a much broader way. And of course, I started hitting wrong notes all over the place. I realized how little I knew about my fretboard, and thought the real value in this is to force me to learn this fretboard. And I learned it by listening to what I was playing, because I was hitting so many wrong notes. I'd have to quickly correct either up or down a half step, which forced me to listen more to what I was playing and forced me to use more chromaticism, which of course is another subject we'll get into in another book. But
Yeah, we've had some
I
people
mean,
asking
look,
about that.
you'll have to just interject, Luke, because I love to talk. I'll just gas
Oh no, no,
bang.
you're
So,
great.
I mean,
Because
you know.
as you're talking, you're ticking off some of these questions that we're getting. Because people have asked about how to stop being predictable in their legato playing. Because they practice little exercises or little nuggets, and then their whole experience of legato playing is just moving those cells around and moving those sequences around. And I'm guessing just the fact that you can listen and react and hear where you want to go instead of being
Yeah,
at the mercy of your fingers or pre-programmed thought is the key.
it'd be like playing a thing like, say you were playing this sort of idea in like an A minor sort of thing, and maybe you're going to go, or an A Dorian sort of sound, for instance, and you want to go, you want to land on that major six there. You can no, go to that one, like go up there, and because you're actually utilizing what the guitar's really good at, which is hard to do on a piano, but the guitar's awesome at it, where you can just slide up and down strings and really get movement, and you can still find the same note you're looking for, but you get radical movement. That sliding around stuff, we talk about that in the book, is just a huge thing. And it is, in a sense, it is like legato technique, because if you just, there's so much energy in the string that when you just move it up a half step, you don't even change fingers, just move it. There's no way I'd have to tap that. Sorry, I'm terrible at tapping. I haven't done it in years, but I have to, or I'd have to do the to get that kind of interval. But I can. I'm starting to sound very Alan Holdsworth now, but if I'm actually, for some reason when I demonstrate this, I sound just like Alan, but if I play, I don't. I think that sort of goes away a bit. But if I use it in this way, where I go, you can get really lovely big intervals, but it's just about sliding your fingers around, and it's such a natural thing to do on a stringed instrument that once you really get into that, you can exploit the hell out of it, and it's fantastic.
So yeah, that's also something you talk about in the book. Is you look at these slides, and one thing you notice in your lines is that a line, not in an exercise, but in an actual line, you might have a sequence where you do a slide ascending, you do another slide ascending, then you have a descending slide. You have you're not so locked in with this is when I do this thing it goes that way, and you weave them together. We've had someone ask about how do you do this stuff at warp speed, this hearing ahead or creating lines like this. I'm guessing it's slow practice and starting to build a collection of different movements that you like and sounds that you like.
Well, yeah, and also talking about warp speed, it's like there's a term we use here in Australia, and Luke, you might be able to help me. Like I think it's a cricket term. It's called match fit. Is that what that is? Is it?
Yeah, well,
A
Matt,
lot of
it's
us.
most terms. I don't talk about cricket. I don't know if I've told you, got a deeply troubled family history with cricket.
Okay, fair enough.
So
I've got a
we'll.
deeply troubled history with cricket balls. I almost got killed by one when I was a kid, so I just observed from afar
Oh,
after
my
that.
nose
But
wasn't always this wide. That was a gift from my
yeah,
dad at a
yeah,
cricket ball.
yeah, mine almost got me. It got me right in the chest, and people have been killed by that. So I mean, yeah, that was the end of my cricketing career. But anyway, that term match fit just means that you're in shape, you're ready to go, you know. And for a musician, that means you've obviously been doing lots of gigs, and so when you step on the stage, it's like home for you, and you're just ready to go. And that is where I sort of feel I'm not at these days, because I was lucky enough to go and see the Aristocrats when they came through Melbourne about a month ago. And because I knew Guthrie and Marco, it was the first time I'd met Brian. Lovely, lovely chap. It was really wonderful to see him. And boy, talk about match fit. I mean, those guys they're still out there. They're just gig after gig after gig, and intense improvising and blowing every night. Like, they are as on fire as you could possibly be. And I must admit, just sort of standing there, just feeling a bit sad, and I thought, oh man, I'd love to have that. But then I thought about the grueling road trip that they're on, and I thought, well, I do love being at home, and I'd miss my family, and so it's sort of it is a trade-off. You're out there and you're playing your butt off, but it's a tough old life out there. Even at the top level, it's still a tough life. But yet the tempo that you play things at, that is determined by how match fit you are. Like, for me, I can play at a reasonably fast tempo and still have creative ideas and sort of sometimes get to them in time. But as far as the blinding speed things go, the faster I get these days, the more I realise, like, well, I'm either really just hoping for the best, or it is sort of getting more into predetermined hand positions or learned things. So I'm improvising less and less. So if you temper your speed to a tempo and that you feel like you're still capable of being creative at, then that's a great way to practice, where you feel like I have options, I have time to make choices. If you leave space in your improvising, then to give yourself time to think, then you can start to develop that creativity in the moment and get better at doing that. Because if you're constantly playing fast all the time, but it's so fast that you don't have time to really think about what you're doing. I was talking to my friend about this the other day, and I said, "Yeah, I'm just not match fit, man. I'm having trouble improvising, and I think I just said I'm not match fit," and he interpreted that as my chops aren't up. And I said, no, it's not that. I feel like my fingers are moving well. They feel fluid. I feel fine when I play. I said, it's just that when I'm improvising in the moment, if I try to go too fast, I either feel like I've got a great idea, but I can't get to it in time, or I do get to it in time, but it's poorly executed. So it's sort of one of those things. And that's when he realised where I was coming from. I was talking purely in terms of improvisation. And that unpredictability thing is the one thing that does come up a lot when people discuss my playing, and I tend to be pretty down on myself when it just comes to my own playing, because I just just flip on YouTube and someone's on there doing something absolutely mind-blowing, and I think, what am I doing? Why don't I just retire and take up something else? And but people say that. They say there is an unpredictability there when you improvise, and that's what they enjoy. And I figure, well, okay, well, if people enjoy it, I should keep going then, because I enjoy that. And I try to sort of paint myself into corners and figure a way out of them. And I'm always looking for another way to try and either say the same thing or find something different, trying to surprise myself. That's what I'm trying to do when I improvise.
Nice. I think hopefully you guys have had all the light bulb moments that I've just had during that. Um, I am one of those guys that learned classical guitar for a little bit, thinking that there was some sort of superpower to going classical first, and thinking about classical guitar technique. When I watched you playing, I actually realized that there were some things that on rock guitar we should be doing differently. And I think a couple of those things are how we mute, and which people have asked about. So actually the left and right hand position for muting. But I'm going to put you on the spot now, and I'm going to look stupid if you don't do it. But can you play that A major scale, 4 note per string? And I'd just like everyone to look at the thumb on your left hand. I hope you do it the same way you did it the last time. But can you just...
I'll switch to this camera, and like I said, let me try and get so then now you can see the thumb movement. But
Okay.
yeah, I try to not keep too much pressure there. It just kind of...
Yeah. So if you can
Yeah,
see,
just... kind of
from where he
walks up the
started to
neck
where
with
he
the other
ended,
hands.
the actual thumb.
And
Yeah,
I tend
exactly.
to keep a thumb position. You know, I try to sort of, I'm sort of basically from a blues rock background, so you know my thumb sort of tends to hang over the neck a fair bit, especially if I'm. But then you know if I'm going to try and get a bit more reach out of the thing, the thumb will. Sorry, the thumb will. You can see how it just randomly moves. It just randomly moves about according to what I'm really trying to do and what I feel. It's now I've seen Doug Aldrich play a lot. I don't know if you know Doug. He's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah, definitely.
fantastic guitar player. And when I was doing the Nelson gig years ago, Doug was in a band called House of Lords, and they opened for us. So I got to watch Doug play every night, and I was just astonished at Doug's legitimate. He's a fine classical guitarist, and it's just incredible how he can play everything with his thumb almost directly behind the neck. I've watched videos of him sometimes because he was in Whitesnake for a while, and I watch a lot of those videos, and absolutely ripping with high gain, and yeah, bending strings, and his thumb's always behind the neck. So once again, there's no rule to this. Just let your body will tell you what it wants to do. It's like I try to just sort of let it happen naturally rather than force it. I think the worst enemy of anything we're trying to do is tension. That is the worst. That is the enemy. It's when you feel you're starting to tense up and apply too much pressure. I think that's the absolute enemy, regardless of any style of music you're playing, is to try and, when that happens, I'd say stop, take a breath, let it all go, and come back and try to be aware of that and just try to breathe it out. Sometimes I hold my breath when I'm playing. It's really awful. It's, you know, we're not in a boxing ring here. It's meant to be, you know, there is no need for any tension because it's not a tense activity, but the tension can be in the music. So it's a hard thing to, I suppose, talk to singers about it too. They need to sing with power and aggression, but there's got to be a flow, otherwise they'll hurt their voices. You know what?
Yeah.
I should play to something so that I'm actually playing music and you can sort of see what's going on rather than just talking about it. Because
Yeah, that would be great. And so, what people can also look out for is just how that thumb is moving up and over. I think you do it as you come to the higher strings, the thumb comes up sympathetically with them, and then as you go to the lower strings, you drop the wrist and bring the thumb down. Is that kind of how
yeah,
it works?
well, yeah, like you'll sort of see, like as I'm playing down here, the thumb's moving further down the neck. But if I'm playing here and I want to bend a string, it's right. I'm Eric Clapton, you know what I mean? It's right over there, and because I need the strength, and all the fingers are generally bending. So
Yeah, and I think
it's just
that's
that it's better if I just improvise to some, excuse me, improvise to something, because then it'll happen naturally rather than me thinking about it. So you can sort of observe it. So I'll see how I go. I'll play to this. This is one of the tracks I think that we've got with the book. Actually, one of the improv tracks we've got. You'll get to jam over. So let's see what happens.
Absolutely incredible. So, any questions on
Oh,
that? I think the first one is someone's asked about hammer-ons from nowhere. I think all the string changing you're doing, and sometimes you're just playing one note on a string. Are you using any hammer-ons from nowhere, or how do you
actually,
articulate that side?
no, no. I heard Greg Howe is synonymous with that technique, and I heard Greg talk about it, and I didn't quite understand what he meant. And then, in the course of doing this book, you and I were talking about it, and I thought, well, I better research what Greg does. Just, and I credited Greg with it in the book. Of course, I didn't sort of start pontificating about it like it was something that I knew a lot about. But when I watched Greg do it, I thought, what I get what he's doing now. And I think a lot of what I think I actually hybrid pick that stuff. I think it's what Greg is doing, but he does it really well. It's an incredible technique. But I think if he hits a note here, I think he is literally just hammering the notes. So he's getting notes with his left hand that he's not picking. And it's quite phenomenal the way he does it. But I think for me, it's like I'm so used to hybrid picking a lot of that stuff. And also, my action's a little higher and my strings are a little heavier. Uh, and plus, I don't have a string mute as well. So it's quite an alien technique for me. So for me, what I guess would normally be a hammer on from nowhere, I would actually pick it. But so like if I think I demonstrated it doing like an arpeggiated type of thing where I was and I would just it's very hard for me to do. It's so instinctive for me to want to pick that note. If I go to my other cameras here, sorry you can't see the. It's so instinctive for me to want to go. That's the thing. It's like it's so normal for me to. That the hybrid picking or a little bit of sweep picking or whatever, it's so interwoven into my legato stuff that it's hard for me to stop it. But that still doesn't mean you couldn't just hammer on those. You could just go. If you were better at it than me, of course. But that is an option as well. I mean, there's uh, if you were doing a thing like a. In a sense, that's almost like a hammer on from nowhere in a way. There it is there, yeah. Sometimes I'll use that kind of technique where it's almost like a you almost get that kind of. And I suppose that is in a way like a hammer on from nowhere where I'm getting that note for free without having to pick it. So I mean, yeah, you could do it almost all in hammer-ons in a way.
So I think maybe the refreshing thing on your take there is that you speak to some people who are really into the alternate picking, and they'll say economy picking is cheating or stuff like that. You're not against it. There's nothing wrong with doing hammer-ons from nowhere. You just don't personally use them.
Absolutely, there is no cheating in music. I mean, there's just an end result that you want. Like, I mean, because I mean, it is impressive when people can alternate pick everything they play. I'm in awe of people that are capable of doing, but it's a sound. I mean, it is a sound. And that's probably why they're doing it. They love that aggressive or the percussive sound of alternate picking. But there's a sound involved in legato, and it depends on how legato you want it. Do you want to add a little bit of alternate picking in with the legato playing to give it a sort of a hybrid sound? Like Yngwie Malmsteen does that a lot. Like a lot of Yngwie's stuff is a friend of mine knows Yngwie's playing very well, and he said you and him have more in common than you might think, because Yngwie does do that a lot, where he'll use aggressive alternate picking mixed in with legato playing, So yeah, you empty your mind of all those thoughts of right or wrong, good or bad. Like it's just what are you trying to do, and how are you going to do it? You know, it's like that is literally it. And are you getting the result you want? Like if you're doing it legato and you think it's just not aggressive enough, then work on your alternate picking and do that. And but you know, if there's things about legato playing you really like that like just certain sort of phrases, like this sort of phrase I love to use, where I'll go so that I'll hit the first note, then all hammer-ons, and then the last note is a hybrid pick thing. But I just love doing it like, where you hit the first note quite hard, and then I'll deliberately sort of just try to back off the other ones and then really snap that last one. So I love that sound. It sort of sounds horn-like to me. And I do love the fact that you've got this dynamic difference between the aggressively picked note and the legato sounds. So I sort of started
Really
to
sharp
fall in love
contrast.
with, yeah, I started to fall in love with that contrast, because I was starting to, I was playing a Fender Telecaster for many years, and one thing about playing a Tele is it will change the way you play. You sort of start to become the guitar in a weird way, which I loved. I just fell in love with it, and I was starting to use less gain, and I really enjoyed the discrepancy between the notes that I wasn't picking and the notes that I was picking. And I started to really enjoy that dynamic difference. It just felt so much more expressive to me. And so I started to not be concerned about having a whole ton of gain on the guitar, and I started to use a slightly heavier gauge. I was sort of a 9 to 42 guy for many years, and then I played 11 to 52 for a long time, and in the end I decided to go back to 10 to 52, because there's just certain bending things you can get on 10s that you can't. It's a bit hard to get them on 11s. So
Nice. If you don't mind me going on a bit of a side rant, I really love what you just did there. You just played that little chromatic run up there, and I remember back in the day I used to practice all those, chromatic exercises in place, going across all the strings. And I remember someone telling me, that's not music, or you'll never use that, and things like that. And then there it is in your playing this thing that people had told me you'd never use. And I think there's this thing around just exercises in general, and there's a little stigma around them. I think the problem is that people practice them with the intention of leaving them as exercises, or they practice
yeah,
them
yeah,
with the exercise mindset of the technique being the only thing. But when you take something that most people might just think is an exercise, and you add the musicality, the articulation to it, and a rhythmic pulse to it, you get something that's actually quite musical and quite interesting. And a few people to do that, you've got a unique little phrase there that I don't think I've heard many people play.
yeah. And it's the sort of thing where you can look at an exercise like that, or you can look at a movement like that and go, well, is it an exercise? Is it the sort of thing you might want to repeat? You could repeat it. You could just go. So it could sort of be a lick in a way. So you can, like, it gives you sort of a little flight of the bumblebee type of sound, Like, but then use it just that once. Just use it in a blues. A blues player could use that lick completely. It's a great lick. It just fits in the minor pentatonic right there. So look at all those sort of things. Like sometimes we look at exercises as things we need to repeat and loop and carry on, which is good because it does build coordination and hand strength and all those things, mental acuity. But contained within those things are some awesome ideas. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the sounds. I mean, it's like I remember sitting on a Gary Willis seminar, and Gary Willis is one of the world's greatest musicians who just happens to be a bass player, and I just say that because I don't want to say he's a great bass player. He's a great musician. He's just an incredible composer and soloist and one of the greatest fretless bass players in the world. And Willis was he played in a band called Tribal Tech with Scott Henderson. And he was doing a seminar at Musicians Institute when I was there, and I was lucky enough to sit in on it. And someone asked the inevitable question. They said, Willis, when you're soloing, do you think of scales or arpeggios? And he said, he thought about it and he said, look, to be honest, I just play ideas. And that comment just absolutely blew me away. And many years later, I got to do a project with Willis, and we had a spare moment, and I reminded him of that. And I said, when you said that, I said, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I interpreted that as no matter what you're hearing, no matter how complex that music is that you have to play to, you just hear it as a sound, and then you think, I'll play this sound because I think this sound will be good. It'll be what I want to hear over that music. And he said, yeah. He said, if you know the sound, why even bother to put a name to it? Just play, here's this sound, I'll play this sound, and then the two sounds become one, and you've got a great piece of music. And obviously the study to get to that level is a lot, but that should be the end goal. It gets back to that ear training thing I was talking about, where you're just hearing intervals and hearing them as ideas and musical ideas and melodies, really. And you just start to improvise that way. And all of a sudden you realize that you play less licks and you're playing more actual lines, and contained within your licks are lines that you might want to embellish and mutate into other places. So yeah, that's how my brain works anyway.
Awesome. I think there's some like check boxes we've got to hit. I know some people want to have asked about strength and coordination exercises for the third and fourth finger. If you've got any tips for those, and tips on muting. I think those are the big things that keep coming up. So if you can talk us through your right and left hand muting, and getting those tricky fingers under control.
Yeah, the muting thing is huge. It's and still a challenge for me to this day. And it's kind of I'll go back to my other camera here. It's kind of an esoteric thing where it's like by any means necessary. It's about the only real way I could say it. Like if I'm on the top string, the heel of my right hand plays a huge role. If I'm on the top strings, you'll sort of see my right hand sits across the bottom strings like this, but so you'll hear that. But sometimes the tip of this first finger might be resting on that second string to try and keep it quiet, because you'll. And of course the heel comes up, but now the strings are being muted by this guy. So, and it's really challenging, especially when we were doing this book, and I had to play some of the exercises. I was completely exposed because there's no backing track to hide any string bumps or anything like that. And boy, it was challenging just to get things like that quiet. But when I'm doing that, I'm trying to sort of use my right hand palm to come across to the second string but not touch the first string. And it is challenging. But also I'm letting my first finger sort of rest against that second string as well. So you get this, I'll get this down here. So you get this. So I'm trying to keep that guy quiet like that. So it's sort of muting the next string that I'm going to play. I'm trying to keep that quiet until it's required. And of course, once you start doing that, it's fine. You're sort of focusing on all the other strings. So. And that right hand palm really plays a huge role in it. Sometimes the other fingers will come into play. This is hilarious. It's just hilarious because it's so out of the blue. But one of the best muting techniques I ever got was from James Hetfield. And it's when I was living in America, living in Los Angeles, and the Black Album came out. And they were releasing singles from that. And biggest album of the year, and to be one of the biggest albums of all time. And I think it was the song Nothing Else Matters. And James does the guitar solo in that. And he's a fantastic soloist. He's right up there with Kirk Hammett, to be pretty to be perfectly honest. I mean, and he did this thing where he bent. They showed him in the studio, and he did this. He did this. Bent a note maybe on this string, and I watched him, and I think he palmed the pick, but he did a thing. Essentially, it was this. This he kind of palmed the pick, I think, and went like that. So he hit the note and put a finger on the adjacent strings, a finger each on the adjacent strings, so he could vibrato. I guarantee Bob Rock, the producer, was sitting there going, James, you've got to stop those other strings from moving, man. And it's like, yeah, okay, I got it. And it's just become second nature to me now, all thanks to James Hetfield. So who would have thunk that? One of my biggest influences is the guy from Metallica. So I just instinctively do it now, where you can see this finger and the pick are holding the other strings. If I guess this is all, the muting thing really comes out if you do any kind of studio work or home recording. And look, in studios, I have absolutely total transparency here. I've used gaffer tape, I've used foam by any means necessary to get the part clean and get it on tape. Whatever it takes. Live, we'll figure it out. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's muting is a challenge. I actually have. Many years ago, I did an album for Planet X, that's Virgil Donati and Derek Sherinian's band, and it was called Quantum. And originally, Alan Holdsworth was supposed to play on that album, and gradually, Alan was playing on less and less stuff, and Virgil kept giving me tracks to play on, and started off as two, and then I ended up doing the entire album. But Alan did play on 2 songs, and go back to my talking head camera here. Alan did play on 2 songs. And then many years later, Virgil and I went to India to play these songs, and it was just me and him, and the rest of the bass and keyboards were on his computer, and we played along to those. So to relearn the tunes, Virgil sent me the stems, the stereo stems of the tracks. He sent me drums, bass, keyboards, and guitar. And much to my absolute delight, the 2 songs that Alan took solos on, his solos were on the stems. And I have those tracks here. And I have Alan's solos in glorious isolation with his beautiful stereo reverb that I'm pretty sure he would have printed and sent to them. And man, they are just, talk about, let alone a guitar playing masterclass, it's a muting masterclass, because they are pristine. He's playing some of the most mind-blowing stuff all over the place, all over the shop. And in the background is nothing. There is not one string bump, not a squeak. It sounds like someone playing a keyboard. I can't believe it's someone playing this instrument. It's that clean. I'd love to play them for you now, but I'm kind of, out of respect for Alan and also Virgil and Derek too, these are tracks that they own, so I have no business making them publicly available. But sometimes when people come by, I'll happily play them. And they just sit there with their mouths open, because I swear to God, that's the whole thing we're talking about here is muting. Boy, it is. Alan Holdsworth's muting technique was alien, otherworldly. I mean, it's unbelievable to listen to. So yeah, that's the industry standard right there. But yeah, by any means necessary, whatever it takes to keep everything else quiet, just explore your options and use it. And hey, look, at the end of the day, if you're quick enough with one of the muting things, go ahead and use it. I mean, that's kind of become a technique in itself. When you see people flip that thing on and off, it's quite remarkable. So, whatever it takes.
Going back to what you just did there as an exercise, you just did a dramatic thing across all 6 strings. Do you pick 2? Well, yeah, you were picking the first 2 notes and then doing 2 pull-ups. That's something you do a lot, right?
Generally, yeah. But like, as I've said, there's no absolutes here. Mr. Garsed is nothing but grey area. Not just the hair, but the playing as well. I'm the last person that says I absolutely do this all the time. Anything could happen at any time. So, but for the most part, yeah. If I'm playing any kind of ascending thing, or anything like any sort of phrase that involves 3 or more notes on a string, I'll generally pick the first two. So, but that's there's nothing to say I won't just do that other technique where I did that. If I'm looking for that lower dynamic to get that effect where I want that last note to really snap out, then I won't pick the other notes because I want them to be quieter. So. The minute you don't pick it, you have a lot of control over the dynamic of the note, and I think that was kind of a conscious effort for me to get away from really just sounding like a total Alan clone, because I just thought that was wrong. Like to have someone that unique that had given us so much in terms of just how unique he was, to just take that, it's not right. You've got to bring something to the party. And I thought, well, man, I've got to do my best to try and find what it is that I do that's natural, and try and bring that to the party and let it stand on its own. And I ended up being on an album with the guy. It's like it's like one of the first albums I did when I got to America was Centrifugal Funk, and I'd only been really exploiting Frank Gambale's ideas with my hybrid picking for about a year and a half by the time I did that album, and Frank was on it. So, boy, it would have been a sad state of affairs if I just decided to go straight down the rabbit hole and learn Frank's technique. I would have got eaten alive. I mean, what would I have done? I'm on there with... It's like a guy still learning this technique with the master. It's like you're going to get eaten alive. The only thing that saved me on that album, being next to Sean Lane and Frank Gambale, was the fact that my vocabulary was predominantly my own. I had my own ideas going on. So, because technically I was dead in the water, I was on an album with two of the greatest guitar players that have ever lived. So yeah, thank goodness for having something to say that only you can say, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the greatest things about that album is how you have these guys who are so unique, in how they approach it, and the vast range across the three of you. So you did a little bit on that two picking thing. We've had a lot of people ask about your rhythmic approach. So a lot of people, when they play legato, it's just kind of a flurry. It's just almost like that kind of effect or trill where everything's just spasming as quickly as possible, like a twitch kind of thing. But you're very, you actually seem like you do two things. You're sometimes very intentional and specific, and then sometimes you're very liquid and you kind of swell in and out of subdivisions. Is that a conscious thing for you? Where does that come from?
I think it comes from people telling me to slow down and and be. Well, I think that was the transition from being this loose cannon playing in pubs around here, doing whatever I felt like I could do, or basically what I knew how to do, and then moving into the more professional world with making albums and things like that, and people saying, no, we need a solo on this that people can remember. We need something that's melodic. And I was capable of it. I think it was just an insecurity thing where I tried to up the technique a lot. To be honest, it was because I didn't have any other older musicians around me to guide me. I just assumed that a sign of progression was whether or not you could play faster. Because I heard that in classical music. Some of the most virtuosic, is virtuosic the right word? Some of the most intense pieces were played at high tempo with incredible precision. And country players do it all the time. Even some jazz guitarists do it all the time. Like, they're ripping. Bluegrass players. I mean, it's all about that pecking, baby. It's like it's played flat out, high tempo, and they get awards for it. You know what I mean? And fair enough. I love it. But it can lead you down a path. And it led me down a path where I thought it was all about chops. And working with other musicians, they started to say, you can leave some space and maybe play a triplet every now and then, maybe, like things like that. And then I really started to enjoy that. And I think Scott Henderson's been a huge influence on that, because Scott's thing is that, like rhythm and space and all that. He's got more chops than he even would ever need. He'll never admit it, but he does. And I've seen him. And but Scott's thing is space, rhythm, all that sort of thing. And when you interject that into your playing, you got so much variety at your fingertips. And like I said, like the legato thing, I think that's people getting carried away with it being a thing. Legato, oh, that's that thing you do when you can't pick fast, so then you can play fast. It's like, yeah, that's true. If I had to pick every note, I certainly wouldn't be playing at the tempo I play at for certain passages. But for me, I play legato whether I'm playing fast or slow. You know, I just like the sound of it. I like to be able to play. I mean, there's just no way you're going to get that sound picking every note. It's just not going to sound like that because that's not what the nature of alternate picking is. Alternate picking is meant to be more percussive and, depending on how you do it, more aggressive or less aggressive. But it is percussive. That's the beauty of it. And that's what I just did, is, to me, is the beauty of legato. It just has a sound. And so, yeah, it doesn't make any difference whether I'm playing fast or slow. It's not about that. It's just the sound. Do I want to inject this kind of sound? And that should be your guide for pretty much everything you do.
Just going back on that, someone's asked, did you ever practice like metronome, fixed subdivisions, that kind of thing, or was it always very organic and musical?
I probably wouldn't practice with a metronome, but generally with a backing track, like a drum groove, and generally jamming along to chord changes, like a song of some kind, like what I just played to. And you can sort of see, like when I actually play to a song, I feel like my playing is a bit more, it's more musical, you know what I mean? Because I'm playing music and I'm trying to be musical. I'm not trying to demonstrate anything in particular. Hopefully I am demonstrating it because it's just what I do. But yeah, it was always in the context of some kind of metric constant. So you could absolutely do it to a metronome. Absolutely do it to a metronome or to a drum groove or a backing track of some kind. So I think that's the point. Like to really hear the beauty of a rhythmic subdivision is to hear it against something that's pretty much constant. That's why sometimes a lot of soloists I've talked to, and these are world-class players that I won't name, but they've said if they're playing in a situation with a drummer in particular that tries to mimic everything they do. So if they're playing to a quarter note groove and they decide they want to play a triplet or a quintuplet, and the drummer jumps on that, they're like, you just took it away. You just took away the magic of what I was doing, which was playing against what you're doing. And it's that juxtaposition of one rhythm over the top of another, which sort of can be interesting. Whereas if everyone's playing the same thing, then there is no juxtaposition, is there? It's now the song's in 5/4. You're not playing a quintuplet anymore. So anyway, but it's really good fun. It's like I said, it just gives you ultimate variation. I think if you improvise a lot and you're interested in improvisation, you need harmonic, rhythmic, and dynamic variation, and as much of it as you can get. Like as many choices and options as you can get, because then you won't bore yourself, let alone the audience.
That's great advice. Um, I'm sure lots of future audiences are thanking you now for sharing that with us. We've got a question a little bit off topic on legato, but it's still on the topic of improvisation and vocabulary. Did you ever practice licks? And if you did practice licks, how did you do it? I found it. Okay. They want to understand the exact process of memorizing your lines and your licks. And I'm sure you're applying scales, intervals, and arpeggios in your ear. However, what's your process for actually learning your phrases and how you practice your licks?
Well, yeah, definitely. I used to practice licks. In fact, I was one of the most lick-based players out there. Like the transition to trying to play more in terms of melodies and lines, that happened. That happened when I sort of met TJ Helmrich and we started to work together a lot. And TJ knew a lot more about music theory than I did, and would teach me scales and things, and we were sort of going to see a lot more players around Los Angeles. Like just going to see Tribal Tech with Scott Henderson was a masterclass in improvisation. I mean, in fact, the first time I saw those guys and I saw Scott play, I actually couldn't pick the guitar up for 2 weeks. I questioned my entire future because I thought it was one of the greatest examples of musicianship I'd ever seen, and I still pretty much feel the same way every time I see Scott play, because that's all he's thinking about is the music. He's not there to impress the guitar player in the front row or anything like that. That's never been what he's about. He is there to play something musical, and the level of maturity that exists in him as a musician, it seems to have been in him since he was, I don't know, since he was born, probably. I don't know, but because he seems to have been that great ever since he was in his early 20s. But yeah, that was just something that was very apparent to me, and it was something I started to sort of work on. But no, one of the things I did when I was in my pub band here in town was we generally had a gig Friday and Saturday night. There were lots of gigs around here back in those days. And so I'd think, well, I'll try and think up a lick that I can use on the gig. And so if I came up with a lick, I'd think, well, what sort of lick is it? Like, is it the sort of thing that only works higher up the neck because it might involve a bit of a stretch? Is it the sort of thing I can move around in any key, or does it only work in one key? And that'd sort of determine how I used it. But there was always that challenge of how do I get into it and how do I get out of it? And I'm trying to think of a lick that I might have played. Here's an old favourite. This actually ended up on the Centrifugal Funk album, and it was great sort of. It's one of those weird ones where you put the higher note on the lower string. Now the first thing I do was, okay, well that's a cool lick. What is it? Like, is it so the first thing I think of is it sounds like it could be a E major lick, couldn't D major, I'm sorry. And so consequently, it could also be a B minor lick. So, because B is the relative minor, of course. So. And so then the next thing I'd think is, well, how do I get into it? And I'd have to come up with a way of playing into it if I wanted to use it in an improvisational way. So my hand has to be in this kind of position. My first finger has to be there. So I'd think, well, so I can get into it now. So. And then I'd think, well, how can I get out of it? What do I do once I've played it a couple of times? I don't want to just sit there and get stuck in it. So I'd have to look at it and go, well, am I going to use it in D major? If so, how do I get out of it and use it in a D major way? So maybe I could do that. And all this will work in B minor and also in D major. So I've sort of got two ideas for the price of one. So if the song is. And maybe I could just do it once. So. Sorry. Or, maybe I will repeat it a bit and sort of make a bit of a feature out of it. And there, so there's that. There's how do you play into it? How do you play out of it? How do you get away from it? And then I'd look at it and think, well, if I'm here in this position, is there anything else I can do with my fingers that sort of it's sort of the same notes, but I might do them differently. And instead of going, maybe I could go, maybe I could go. Because my fingers are kind of sitting there anyway, and now it's sort of turned into a rolling triplet sort of thing. So we got. I would look at all my licks like that, where those factors, like first, what key, what sort of modal shape is it? Is it a major thing? Is it a minor thing? Or is it both? Is it something I can play all over the neck? I couldn't play that down here because the stretch would be too big. So it's limited to up in this area. Whereas other licks that I came up with could be moved around. And I'd think, well, is it the sort of thing where that's all I can do with it? Or can I sort of keep my fingers in the same general position and change the order in which I move them and get another lick out of it? So, because that is a different lick to... That's different to... But it's... The fingers are already there, so with very minimal effort, I've got two licks. So I was always trying to get the most bang for my buck in that way. And I had so many of these things. Man, I could seem to put them anywhere. There was one thing, and sometimes I'd put them in songs, like when I did the Nelson record, like the solos for that record were very, very well structured. Some of them were. I did get to invent a couple, but some of them were very well structured from the demos, and Matthew and Gunnar and the producer Mark Tanner said, we really do like this solo, and we don't really, we'd like you to just play it. And I thought, okay, well, that's fair enough. And I think there was the song After the Rain. Now, I've got to remember it now. The original solo was that. It was... They left space, and then... That was the solo. And I thought, well, I love that solo. It's a beautifully constructed solo. I'm happy to play it. And I thought, you know what, though? I've got a lick I can put in the gap, if you're cool with that. And they said, what's that? And I mightn't be able to play it. I'll try and play it. But I went, I had this lick that went... I don't know whether I repeated it or not, but I remember I definitely... And I just thought I could use that. That'd sound pretty nice. It'll bridge those two sections together. So... And they loved it. They said, that's awesome. Put it in. And I thought, great, so I satisfied them by playing their same solo, but I managed to get a little bit of myself in there. So those licks really came in handy. I mean, on Centrifugal Funk, they were all over the place. There were licks galore on that album. And because they just wanted a lot of shred on there, and I was struggling. They were long solos, so I used every... The kitchen sink went on there pretty much, but that's how the licks are fantastic. But always try to look at them and think, well, can I tear it apart? Can I pull it apart and find something smaller in there that I could morph into something else? So yeah, that would be my advice.
If you want to kind of recap that, anyone who's watching this, you did a video for our YouTube channel, which is kind of on practicing licks or working on licks. So you can find that if you YouTube Guitar Vivo, Brett Garsed, you'll find his video on our channel that talks a little bit about that.
That's right, the hybrid picking one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That was a lick, and just how to integrate that into your playing to where it becomes something more.
So I'll put you on the spot in a second and see if we can grab a couple of exercises from you, some teasers from the book, and some third and fourth finger strengthening exercises, and we'll
That's
We'll do
right, the
that.
third and
But
fourth finger. Well, you know
I'll give you a
what?
second to think about that. I'll do my little last plug of the book,
Go
and
for it.
give people a little show of what it's about while you have a think. So let's have a look here. This is the new book that is out, available for pre-order now. So basically, we wanted to start doing pre-orders where we can give people early bird discounts and things like that, but it wasn't working well because you can't do discount codes on Amazon. So what we're going to do is you can pre-order it now and get it for $16.99, and it'll go live on Amazon on Wednesday, where if you pre-ordered it, the PDF, you'll get it sent to you on Wednesday. But if you want the paperback, we'll email you when it goes on Amazon on Wednesday, and for that first 24 hours on Amazon, it will have the lower price. It won't say it's a sale or anything because you can't do that on Amazon, but it'll just be up there for $19.99, and we'll email you when the paperback comes out on Wednesday. You can go get it for the early bird price. So that's just your reward for being here today. Talks about hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides. There's videos for everything. There's even a lot of kind of talking on the videos. There's lots of licks, and the coolest part is there's the whole thing kind of builds up to these 3 solos at the end, which are at level 1, level 2, and level 3. That's not beginner, intermediate, and advanced. It's kind of intermediate, advanced, and spend a year working on the final one. And they're quite long each, and they've got so much vocabulary in them, and so many all of the things you've seen today are just all over those solos. And I think that's one of the most important things that you might get away from this, is that it's not necessarily all about the exercises. It's about having the vision of the sound and then going for the sounds, and in doing that you develop the technique. Because if you're paying attention to what you want it to sound like and what you want it to feel like, then you know what you're asking of yourself physically. So there's these big massive solos, all properly transcribed by my transcriber, who had to put in all the pick strokes
Oh man,
with all
just
your hybrid picking, things like that. So
that person deserves an Oscar and a Nobel Prize all in one, and a Purple Heart probably. So.
yes, I've just offered to pay for his first year of therapy for the PTSD. The next 10 years up to him, but yeah, he's done a great job. So and yeah, you'll also get lifetime access to this replay. So that's the book. I'm really excited by it, and thank you, Brett, working with me on it. It's
Honor.
the big test when I started this company to do the things to create the products I wish I'd have had when I was 15, and this is it. This is one of those things where, God, if I'd have had a book by Brett Garsed on Legato when I was 15, what a player I'd be today. How happy I'd have been.
Brian keeps holding up the old instructional video. I'm having flashbacks for when I had long hair and was young. It's frightening. The old Steinberg, you can't see it, but it's actually hanging up on the wall just above just next to the blue guitar. So
we can
but
put those.
talking about an exercise for the left hand. I mean, this is really wild. If you, I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do. You can just do even things like this, where you go and then alternate it with, and then maybe, so you can work on 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, maybe. Just getting independence in those fingers, just trying to get them all to think for themselves. But if you do find that these two guys are lagging, man, try this. Just play for a while. You could put on a metronome or something and just play for a while, but don't use your first finger. So obviously keep your intervals small, because you don't want to stretch your hand out and stress it too much. But just even doing trills is... try actually playing to a piece of music. Here, I'll put on oh wow, we'll put on that last loop. That's pretty challenging. I'll play to it with just the 3 fingers. This will kill me, but I'm going to do it anyway. This is where I'm ready to go for you people. This is So you could play along to a piece of music like that, and obviously you're going to have to change a lot of what you do. But I swear, once you put this guy back in, it's like running with weights on your feet and taking them off, and all of a sudden it's just these guys just feel alive. Like, but I wouldn't say do it for an hour. Do it for a few minutes every now and then, just to sort of wake them up. And all of a sudden, they'll start to just really have minds of their own and start to all talk to each other. Then it's almost like play a little bit with just these three guys, then put this one back in, and all of a sudden they all start talking to each other. And look out, that's when your hand really starts to work. Your fingers start to work as one group that are all helping each other out, rather than the strong ones are all always carrying the weight and the weak. Because I actually had the reverse problem of, say, blues players where they had like the strong first three and a weak fourth. I think, like for me, that's a weak thing to use the actual blues sort of thing. And the first, third, and fourth are pretty strong. And I think it all comes back to that lack of reach on the neck. I had to use the third and fourth fingers because I couldn't stretch very far. So I needed all the help I could get to get any kind of intervallic range out of the thing. But so yeah, doing that sort of thing really helps. Just, it doesn't have to be fast. It just mentally, there's a mental connection there that just seems to really strengthen up. I can't describe it, but try it.
I legitimately can't believe how good that sounded. But
Well,
I
yeah.
think
Thank
that's
you.
also a testament to your process. So when I imagine everyone else on this call, and myself included, when we try and do that, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't know how to do anything because all of my patterns were reliant on the first finger. Whereas your
Yeah,
process of,
exactly. I hit the same wall. Like, I mean, I'm like, well, I can't do this thing because I need that first finger to do it.
but I think
So
the fact that your ear guides you more than the visuals and more than patterns allows you to play a lot more musically than a lot of us would for a long time.
it's just a great way to not only break you out of old habits, but really recognize that you're already playing some great stuff. You're not actually hearing it. Like, I have students do it all the time, and I'm like, that was a very cool thing you did there, and I have to sort of pull it apart and actually explain to them what's happening within it, and they're like, I had no idea. I just play it, but I had no idea that there's these notes in there, and yeah, it just break it all down to what you're actually hearing, and oh man, all of a sudden the world's your oyster. Then you find yourself listening to all other instruments because you're starting to hear what they're doing as music rather than, oh, that's a saxophone. That's a bagpipe. I don't care what they play. It's like, oh, that's a koto. I don't, all of a sudden you start hearing. I can sit and listen to piano, saxophone, and bagpipe. I love bagpipes. I'm Scottish heritage, so bring on the bagpipes, I say. But I mean, yeah, I'll nick everything from them. Harmonica players, steal tons from them, especially with the slide stuff, like, because you just start to hear it as music then, and you realise you can steal most of it.
Well, the good thing about stealing it from other instruments is a lot of the time you won't get called out. No one will notice you're doing it.
No,
Um,
that's right.
I don't know if you've been following the news lately, but there's been some thievery in the guitar world that's gone a bit viral. Um, there's just one other thing, just one exercise. I will put you on the spot and see if you remember. This question comes up like weak third finger, weak coordination between the third and fourth finger, and usually what people are saying is they can't perform exercises that isolate those things. It's not like it's happening in their music. It's not like they're trying to play something and finding a weak spot. It's like they maybe do 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, realize that's really good, but they can't do it with 3 4 3 4. So just to reframe and maybe give an actual kind of scale based or arpeggio based thing that you might do in the book, you do one thing which is like it's a descending seventh arpeggio where you're playing, like if you're doing D7, you play a C on the B string, and then you do two notes on the G string, and then D on the third string. So it's in that part where you're talking about doing like a descending four notes where it's one note on one string, two notes on the next string, one note on the. Is that making any sense? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Um, not
So
Not quite sure.
you're playing like this. I don't know if you can even see. So like, oh, it's blurring my background, like that kind of thing.
like a like
So
up there or
third finger on the C on the B string.
oh
Oh,
oh
with your
like
third
that.
finger,
Oh, third finger.
and then so you're going after that one note, you're going to the G string.
Oh, do I go there? Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So going 3, 4. That's it. So sorry everyone, that took. I was really bad at explaining that. But you start that on the third finger.
What's that? Sorry.
You start it on the third finger and then do the pinky on.
Oh, the pinky goes there. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's it. So,
yeah.
of course, that makes sense. Yes, of course. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
So,
I found that as a really challenging third, fourth finger exercise, but it's actually something you might play.
well, yeah, because I use it a lot. Like I'll do because I'll use like the hybrid picking thing where I might go. Because it leads to that. It sounds like a sort of a pentatonic sound. And you can make it either major or minor depending on where you want to place this finger after you do it. So you get major. Yeah.
Yeah, just that bit is hard.
It almost a little bit sort of two-handed tapping in a way, isn't it? So it's almost got a bit of the. I think it really is, and once again, it's not necessarily about playing things really fast. I mean, things sound great fast. I mean, I love it, but it's more about developing that mental connection. That's kind of where one of the best exercises, which even I struggle with it a lot, and it's was where I took like a 4-note per string thing, and I figured I'll displace one finger to another string. So instead of playing, we'll take the second finger and put that on the B string. So you get. Now these are the exercises that are in the book. Then we do it with the third finger where we go. And then the fourth one. So each finger in turn gets displaced to the second string. What I adapted it to, after we'd done the book, what I adapted it to was going to not only the second string, but then alternating it with the fourth string. So you get. That one's all right. I think it's this one that really just does my head in. Like a. It's very strange. Like a. That one I find very hard as well. And like I said, I find benefit doing that sort of stuff even at a very slow tempo, because it's not even necessarily about. I mean, obviously, yeah, if you can get it really fast, fill your boots, but at the same time, it's about developing a mental connection, that neural connection where you're moving your hands in a way that you've never moved them before, and you're trying to develop a mental pathway, because this isn't lifting weights. It's not about strength. We've got to develop strength. It's like the strength also happens up here in the mind as well. I think the fingers are probably already strong enough. It's just the signals aren't coming from the brain because we're not used to doing it. It's a new skill. So it's like you could find a person that can, do a lot shoulder pressing in the gym, but if you have them do a handstand and then try and do a shoulder press, it's a completely different thing. I mean, back when I was younger and I used to work out a lot, I could shoulder press a lot when we were doing powerlifting, but someone showed me that once where they have you do a handstand against a wall and try and do a shoulder press like that with just your body weight, and I couldn't do it because it was a whole different set of muscles being used and alien movement, and I find this to be the same way. So yeah.
Fantastic.
A little bit of weight training fitness advice there for you,
but we will not be held personally responsible for any injuries falling on your head trying to do a handstand.
Yeah, please don't do that.
I do remember there was a phase about doing like fingertip push-ups for your guitar playing, which again, don't do that. That's completely unnecessary.
Yeah. Remember the hand grip things and everything, like.
Yep.
Yeah, it's about more than that. I think it's more to do with up here than anything.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that every time we do these things, everyone's talking about how do I reduce tension, and then they go and do these things, but it's just building tension.
It's all tension. Yeah.
So we'll bring that to a close there. Are you happy to just give us a couple of minutes of shreddage to play us out?
Yeah. Well, I'll play that track that I did with three fingers, and this time I'll use all my fingers. And
it'll be what, 33% better. Guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you want to watch the replay of this, the same link that got you here, the same email that got you here, and that same link, guitarvivo.com/legato workshop, that you can follow the YouTube link through there, and you'll be able to watch this for the next 7 days. And all the links to buy the book and pre-order it and get your discount is there too. And if you have questions about it, you can actually reply to that email as well, and I'll get that. Brett, anything else we need to say before we...
No, just Brian's holding up a good on you, Brett sign. Thanks, Brian. Corrado, good to see you, mate. Ciao. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for tuning in.
Again one day.
Great to see so many new faces.
Man, get out of here. All right, well, I'll blow a bit and that'll do. So
let's go for it.
All right.
Nice. Even the track wanted to start again.
Oh,
It
that was a
kept
shame.
going.
I had my repeat set and it just cut off before the end of the song. Oh, it's a shame. I was going for a big majestic end there as well, but whatever. The
I think it was
production
pretty
had it.
majestic throughout. Man, thank you
Uh,
so much. Thank you all for
no
tuning in.
worries.
We will see you all at the next one. And thank you to everyone holding up posters and everyone who's already ordered the book.
Good on you, Gerardo. There it is.
See you all.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.